Inside US prisons, how gang rules secretly control everything. They had 7 minutes to stop it. No one believed the warning. The unit was already too quiet for a Friday afternoon. In a place that lived on noise, radios crackling, boots on concrete, voices layered like static, silence was a symptom. Officer Daniel Reyes felt it before he understood it, a pressure behind the eyes that came from watching a room hold its breath. He stood at the control desk, eyes moving between cameras, waiting for the moment that would explain the feeling. It didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. A man stepped out of line and then stepped back, as if he'd been pulled by a string. Another inmate leaned against the rail, arms folded, watching nothing and everything. The phones went unused. A television kept playing, but no one laughed. Reyes checked the clock. 7 minutes until count. Reyes had worked Northgate Penitentiary long enough to recognize patterns without naming them. Northgate wasn't the worst prison in the country, but it was where reputations hardened, where groups with long memories learned to wait, where rules were followed precisely until they weren't. A hand rose on the tier. Not a wave, not a signal meant to be seen, just enough movement to catch an eye. The inmate's name was Mark Caldwell. He was older than most, gray in his beard, paperwork thick with time served. He didn't cause problems. He fixed them, quietly, the way some men learned to do when they wanted to survive without becoming visible. Reyes met Caldwell's eyes. Caldwell looked away immediately. That was the warning. Reyes tapped the camera feed and zoomed. Caldwell stood still now, hands at his sides. Behind him, 2 other inmates shifted position, each a half step closer to the rail than they had been a minute earlier. It wasn't aggressive. It was organized. Reyes keyed his radio. "Sergeant, can you come to control?" The reply came back casual. "What's up?" "Something's off," Reyes said. "I can't place it yet." The pause. "Be specific." Reyes scanned the screens again. The tier's holding. Phones are empty. Eyes are up. Another pause. Longer this time. "You're reading tea leaves." "Maybe," Reyes said. "But I've seen this before." Caldwell moved again, just enough to turn his shoulder toward the stairs. He scratched his jaw. The gesture looked meaningless. It wasn't. Reyes zoomed tighter and caught the detail he'd missed. Caldwell's left hand was empty. It was never empty. He always held something: paper, a cup, a rag. An old habit from years of making himself look busy. Now his hands were visible. Deliberately so. Reyes felt the countdown in his chest. "Sergeant," he said, lowering his voice, "I think they're about to test us." "Test how?" the sergeant asked. "By seeing what we ignore." Reyes watched as another inmate, young, muscular, restless, took a position near the stairwell. He didn't block it. He marked it. On a different camera, 2 men from opposing groups stood within arm's length without acknowledging each other. That never happened by accident. The sergeant arrived behind Reyes and leaned over the desk. "You're jumping," she said. "I don't see anything." "That's the point," Reyes replied. "If you could see it, it would already be too late." Caldwell glanced up again, just for a second. This time, he nodded once. Reyes turned to the sergeant. "We need to split the tier. Now." "For what reason?" she asked. Reyes hesitated. Saying the wrong thing could escalate faster than doing nothing. "Because if we don't," he said, "whatever they're planning will look justified after." The sergeant exhaled. "You're asking me to move people without cause." "I'm asking you to create space," Reyes said. "Space stops momentum." She looked at the screens again. The quiet pressed in. "All right," she said finally. 10 minutes. We'll call a sanitation check." Reyes keyed the announcement. His voice came out steady. "Attention on the tier. We're running a brief sanitation pause. Step back from the rail." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Caldwell stepped away. Slowly, purposefully. The young man near the stairwell followed. The 2 men standing too close separated without looking at each other. The tier breathed. Reyes felt relief, and then something colder. Relief meant they'd been right. Being right meant there was more underneath. As officers moved onto the tier, Reyes rewound the camera footage. He watched the last 15 minutes at double speed. Patterns emerged. Movements that weren't random. Pauses that matched across screens. He marked timestamps on a scrap of paper, circling the moments where nothing happened. That was when he saw it. On the far camera, partially obscured by glare, an inmate he didn't recognize slipped a folded note into the gap beneath a door. Not hurried, not sneaky, confident. The note disappeared. The door didn't open. Reyes slowed the footage. He caught the inmate's face in profile for half a second. Focused. Not someone improvising. "Sergeant," Reyes said. "We missed something." She leaned in. "Where?" Reyes pointed. That exchange. "That could be anything," she said. "Not with this timing," Reyes replied. "And not with Caldwell watching." They pulled the logs. Door checks. Movement authorizations. Everything looked clean. Too clean. Reyes felt the edges of a larger shape but couldn't see the center yet. Caldwell was escorted past the desk a few minutes later, hands cuffed loosely for the walk. He met Reyes's eyes again. "You did good," Caldwell said quietly. Reyes frowned. "Good at what?" "At listening," Caldwell replied. "Most don't." "What were you warning me about?" Reyes asked. Caldwell hesitated. "I was warning you about rules." "What rules?" Reyes said. Caldwell looked past him toward the tier. "The kind that don't get written down." The sergeant cleared her throat. "That's enough." Caldwell nodded and kept walking. Reyes stared at the screens. The sanitation check ended without incident. No weapons found. No fights. The report would read preventive action successful. It would end there. But Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that they'd interrupted something that hadn't been meant to happen yet. He pulled up the camera again and followed the path of the folded note. It had gone under a door assigned to a man with no recent write-ups and no obvious affiliations. A nobody. On paper. Reyes clicked deeper into the system, pulling older footage, looking for patterns instead of events. He found Caldwell in the background of moments that never made reports. Standing nearby when arguments dissolved. Walking away just before searches were ordered. Always present when nothing happened. Reyes felt the ground shift under his certainty. Because if Caldwell wasn't trying to start something, if he was trying to stop it, then someone else was setting the rules. And those rules were already in motion. Reyes checked the time again. Count was in 3 minutes. He reached for the incident logs, ready to document what they'd seen. But when he opened the file, a new entry flashed onto the screen. It wasn't from today. It wasn't from this unit. It was a flag, quietly added, linking Caldwell to 3 prior, near incidents at different facilities. Different years. Same pattern. Same outcome. Reyes felt the chill settle in. Because this wasn't a warning about a fight. It was a warning about a system that moved across prisons, enforced loyalty without orders, and punished mistakes without violence. And when Reyes clicked deeper to see who had added the flag, the user ID was missing. The missing user ID bothered Reyes more than the flag itself. Systems logged everything. Even errors left fingerprints. An entry without a source wasn't just unusual, it was deliberate. Reyes stared at the screen, cursor hovering as if it might confess if he waited long enough. "Pull the audit trail," the sergeant said, already knowing what he'd find. Reyes tried. The request spun, then returned nothing. No timestamp. No originating terminal. The flag existed without a birth certificate. "That's impossible," the sergeant muttered. "Not if someone wanted it to exist quietly," Reyes replied. They printed what they could and locked the file. The sanitation pause ended. Count cleared. Northgate slid back into its version of normal, the kind that looked calm to anyone not trained to see the seams. Reyes couldn't unsee them now. By the next morning, Caldwell was back on the tier, posture unchanged, eyes patient. The near incident had already faded into rumor. Men joked again. Phones rang. The television found its audience. On the surface, the intervention had worked. Underneath, pressure redistributed. Reyes spent the morning reviewing archived footage from Caldwell's previous facilities. He wasn't looking for crimes. He was looking for timing. At Red Hollow, Caldwell had been transferred 2 days after a commissary dispute dissolved without incident. At Pine Ridge, a lockdown lifted early following a sanitation sweep that found nothing. At both places, Caldwell had been nearby when nothing happened. Patterns didn't accuse. They suggested. Reyes took his findings to Captain Wallace, who listened with the stillness of a man used to bad news delivered quietly. "You're telling me he predicts trouble," Wallace said, "and that trouble evaporates." "I'm telling you someone predicts trouble," Reyes replied. "Caldwell just carries the message." Wallace leaned back. "That sounds like folklore." "It sounds like logistics," Reyes said. "Warnings don't move themselves." Wallace drummed his fingers. "You're implying coordination across facilities." "I'm implying rules," Reyes said. "Unwritten ones." Wallace nodded once. "Then we treat this like intelligence, not discipline." The mistake came disguised as caution. Central office was notified. Not with alarms, not with urgency, just a memo requesting context on an informal influence network. The language was sterile. The response was fast. By noon, an analyst called. By evening, an investigator scheduled a visit. "You escalated," Wallace said to Reyes, not angry, just tired. "I documented," Reyes replied. "You told me to." "I told you to be precise," Wallace said. "Not loud." The investigator arrived the next day with a practiced smile and questions that circled rather than landed. He asked about Caldwell's conduct, Reyes's impressions, the sanitation pause. He nodded at answers as if filing them away somewhere unreachable. "What's your theory?" the investigator asked. Reyes chose his words. "There's a code operating parallel to ours. It prioritizes order, not peace. It enforces compliance without overt violence." The investigator smiled thinly. "You're describing gangs." "I'm describing governance," Reyes said. "Gangs are a tool." The investigator's pen paused. "Be careful with language." Reyes watched him write perception of influence instead of evidence of coordination. That afternoon, the phones went down for maintenance, unrelated, officially. Unrelated things had a way of stacking. Men adapted quickly, trading access for favors. Reyes watched Caldwell stand back, hands empty, eyes up. The young man from the stairwell the day before approached Caldwell, spoke briefly, then walked away calmer than he'd arrived. No argument. No threat. No witness who could point to a crime. Reyes flagged it. At 4:10 p.m., a unit clerk reported a missing sanitation roster. At 4:12, a door check was delayed. At 4:14, a routine count was adjusted by 2 minutes. Small things. The kind that built rooms without walls. Reyes requested to move Caldwell for an interview. Central denied it. On what grounds? Wallace asked on the phone. Lack of cause, came the reply. And risk of disruption. Risk of disruption. The phrase echoed. The system was protecting its quiet. That night, a note slid under Reyes's office door. No envelope. No signature. You're looking at the wrong man. Reyes read it twice. He checked the hallway cameras. Nothing. He returned to the footage and widened his search. He stopped following Caldwell and started tracking the spaces around him. Who stood close when he spoke? Who arrived calm and left calmer? Who passed notes without urgency? A name surfaced, not often but enough. A man called Vance. No tattoos. No write-ups. He worked laundry. He moved carts between units. He spoke to officers easily. He wasn't the muscle. He was the schedule. Reyes pulled Vance's transfer history. It overlapped with Caldwell's at 2 facilities, but not at the same time. Staggered, like a relay, Reyes took it to Wallace. You think Vance coordinates movement, Wallace said. Caldwell signals. I think Caldwell warns, Reyes said. Vance enforces. Wallace exhaled. That's a serious claim. It's a cautious one, Reyes replied. They avoid violence because violence brings heat. They prefer compliance because compliance looks like peace. Wallace nodded slowly. If you're right, intervention is delicate. Which means we can't pretend it doesn't exist, Reyes said. The mistake was choosing observation over interruption. Central wanted proof. Proof required patience. Patience allowed the system to demonstrate itself. 2 days later, a supply delay hit hygiene kits. Not catastrophic. Enough to irritate. The unit adjusted. Men lined up. Voices rose, then settled. Caldwell watched. Vance moved carts. Reyes noticed the clocks again. Who checked them? Who didn't? At 2:38 p.m., Caldwell raised his hand, just enough to be seen. At 2:39, Vance stopped a cart near the stairwell. At 2:40, the young man took position. Reyes keyed his radio. We're approaching the same pattern. Hold, Wallace replied. We need to see it. Reyes felt the seconds harden. At 2:43, a disagreement flared near the rail. Not a fight. A spark. Men stepped closer. The air thickened. Reyes waited for the nod. Caldwell didn't give it. Instead, he looked straight at the camera. Reyes understood too late. The warning wasn't to start something. It was to show restraint, to demonstrate control. At 2:45, the spark died. The line loosened. Phones rang again. Central called it inconclusive. That night, Reyes found a second note under his door. You see it now. Don't name it. Reyes stared at the words, anger rising where relief should have been. Naming things was how you fixed them. Silence was how they spread. The next morning, Central issued a directive. No changes to unit procedures without approval. No discretionary pauses. No unscheduled checks. Order on paper. Reyes walked the tier. Caldwell met his eyes and shook his head once. Not defiant. Apologetic. Reyes felt the cost of the mistake settle in his gut. By choosing to watch, they had taught the system how to hide better. At noon, Wallace pulled Reyes aside. We're transferring you to night shift, he said. Less exposure. Exile, Reyes replied. Protection, Wallace said, without conviction. Reyes looked out over the unit one last time. Men moved easily. Too easily. The quiet had learned how to survive scrutiny. As he turned to leave, the radio crackled with a message from another facility, 3 states away. A sanitation pause. A near incident. An older inmate who watched and said nothing. Reyes closed his eyes. They hadn't stopped the network. They trained it. And the next test wouldn't be designed to disappear. The call came just before dawn, and Reyes knew it wasn't about Northgate. Facilities only called that early when they didn't want to leave a message. When they needed a voice to carry weight. Reyes answered from his kitchen, the city still dark, the phone warm in his hand. It happened, the voice said. Not here. South Ridge. Reyes closed his eyes. South Ridge had the same architecture, the same staffing ratios, the same faith in quiet. He'd read the memo that praised their metrics last quarter. He'd flagged the overlap. He'd written the note that went unanswered. What kind of incident? Reyes asked. A near one, the voice replied. Stopped early. Barely. Barely meant the system had flinched. Reyes reported to Central by mid-morning. The investigator from before was there, suit crisp again, eyes less amused. On the table lay a stack of printouts, camera stills, rosters, timestamps, arranged like a puzzle someone had already solved. They copied it, the investigator said, tapping a page. The pauses, the spacing, the way pressure dissipates without breaking. Reyes leaned in. Copied what? The method, the investigator said. Order without orders. South Ridge's footage told the story Northgate never could. An inmate raised a hand. Another adjusted a cart. A third took a position near a stairwell. No threats. No overt coordination. When officers stepped in, the energy drained. When they stepped back, it returned. A dial turned by people who never touched it. It's not a gang in the traditional sense, the investigator said. It's a protocol. Reyes nodded. Rules. Rules that reduce violence, the investigator added. Rules that stabilize units. That's not nothing. It's not neutral, Reyes replied. It's power. They watched the footage again, slower. The key wasn't the men who moved. It was the men who didn't. The watchers. The carriers. The ones who signaled restraint as often as escalation. Who started it? Reyes asked. The investigator hesitated. "That's the part you won't like." He slid a page across the table. A name Reyes recognized, not Caldwell, not Vance, but a former custody supervisor turned consultant. Someone who'd written white papers on de-escalation. Someone who'd taught courses on influence dynamics. Someone who'd believed that prisons ran better when rules were felt, not enforced. "He didn't build a gang," the investigator said. "He documented what already existed. Then he standardized it." Reyes felt the shape click into place. He turned survival into policy. "He turned quiet into a metric," the investigator said. The consultant had never issued commands. He'd framed incentives, rewarded restraint, punished unpredictability with transfers and audits. He'd let inmates do the rest, knowing that systems always find their own language. "And Caldwell?" Reyes asked. "An early adopter," the investigator replied. "A messenger. He learned that warnings save lives. He also learned that naming the source gets you buried." Reyes thought of Caldwell's empty hands. The deliberate visibility. The nods meant for officers, not inmates. They weren't planning riots, Reyes said. They were preventing them, on their terms. "Yes," the investigator said, "until prevention became leverage." The truth was quieter than Reyes expected. There was no mastermind in the shadows, no secret counsel. Just a feedback loop that rewarded control without accountability. Violence dropped. Metrics improved. Oversight relaxed. Influence concentrated. South Ridge had nearly broken the loop because one unit commander ignored the protocol and intervened loudly. The system recoiled, then adapted. The next pause would be cleaner. The next warning harder to trace. Central's solution was as careful as it was incomplete. They banned the consultant. They rotated staff. They mandated transparency that couldn't be audited in real time. They called it reform. Reyes called it friction. Back at Northgate, Caldwell was transferred without explanation. Vance took a laundry job in another unit. The young man near the stairwell aged 10 years overnight and stopped volunteering for anything. The unit stayed quiet. Reyes returned to day shift with a new title and fewer permissions. He was asked to teach a class on pattern recognition that avoided the word patterns. He complied. He showed officers how to read posture without reading intention, how to create space without announcing fear. "What if we're wrong?" a recruit asked. "Then you apologize to a quiet room," Reyes replied. "And everyone goes home." The note stopped appearing under his door. Not because the network had vanished, but because it no longer needed him. It had learned how to breathe on its own. Months later, a report circulated, unpublished, footnoted, cautious. It concluded that informal influence networks reduced incidents but posed long-term risks to legitimacy. It recommended transparency, rotation, and humility. Reyes printed it and slid it into a drawer. On a Friday afternoon, the unit grew quiet again. Reyes felt it. He watched the clocks. He watched the hands. A new inmate stood near the rail, eyes alert, hands empty. Reyes met his gaze. The man looked away. Reyes keyed the radio. "Sergeant," he said, "let's create space." The sergeant didn't ask why. Afterward, nothing happened. The report would say no incident. The metrics would smile. The quiet would continue to be mistaken for peace. Reyes stood at the desk and understood the final truth. The most violent systems don't announce themselves with force. They announce themselves with calm, with rules that terrify not because they demand blood, but because they demand obedience without authors. He shut down the screens and wrote a single line in the log, knowing it would be read and forgotten. Order without accountability is not safety. He locked the drawer and went back to work. Because if this story proved anything, it was that prevention works, until someone decides to own it. And once that happens, it doesn't end with one prison. This could happen again. If this story shook you, the next one will be worse.